Springtime's coming to an end. Summertime's right around the corner. The temperatures are rising. What do you need to do to protect yourself against the heat? Exposure to high temperatures, high humidity, direct sunlight can actually be quite dangerous to you, particularly if you're very active in that environment. If you work in those environments, or if you play in those environments involved in athletics, if you like to exercise outdoors, if you just like to be out in the sun and on the beach for long periods of time, you're putting yourself at potential exposure and risk for heat-related illnesses. Heat-related illnesses are along the lines of number 1, the dehydration, number 2, heat exhaustion, number 3, heat stroke. Dehydration comes from as a result of an excess loss of fluid without adequate repletion of that fluid. How do we lose water if we're not just losing it by sensible losses? There are multiple insensible losses of fluid. One is respiration. Every time you exhale a certain amount of liquid in the form of water vapor. The more the heat goes up, the higher your metabolic rate goes, the more rapid your breathing becomes, and the more insensible fluid you lose in the form of respiratory exhalation. That's one way. Number 2, evaporation. Evaporation in the form of loss of fluid from the surface of your skin. There's a way to combat that, and we'll get to it. But when you're out and you're getting hot, the temperatures are rising, your body temperature is rising, your metabolic rate is rising, and you're being active, what do? You perspire. When you perspire, you're losing fluid onto the surface of the skin as your body's mechanism to try and cool you down. That heat will then cause the evaporation of that fluid, and you lose that fluid as an insensible fluid loss. How do you combat this? Well, there are a couple of different ways. Number 1, try to avoid prolonged exposure to high temperatures, particularly in high humid climates. If you're out there and you're having a good time, try and get out of the sun, try and get out of the heat, try to cool down for periods of time if you can, and hydrate excessively. What does that mean? Well, that means before you go out, you should start hydrating. You should have about 2 liters of fluid on board, some water or even an isotonic electrolyte drink, but water's better, before you start engaging in outdoor activities in high heat, high humidity environments. Then while you're there, about every 2 hours, you need to hydrate some more. You need to drink probably a half of a liter of fluid every couple of hours if you're participating in high activity sports out in warm temperatures. How warm are we talking? Above 85 degrees, and if you've got humidity over 40%, then that qualifies. And if you live in Georgia and Alabama, that's like every day during the summer. So you need to be sure that you're taking those precautions. Then number 3, to avoid some of that evaporation loss, you want to make sure you cover your skin while you're outside. It sounds kind of contradictory. When you're hot, you want to take off your clothes. But if you're going to be outside, particularly if you're working outdoors in the heat, or you're participating in athletics that require you to perspire a lot, put on long sleeves, wear a hat to protect your skin from that excess evaporation of the perspiration. Ultimately, what will happen is that your clothes will become drenched, but you'll maintain that fluid to a much greater degree. And the purpose of the perspiration is so that it'll cool your body down. You won't lose it all by evaporation, and it'll actually help cool you internally as opposed to allowing your body to become overheated. If you don't practice these preventive measures, if you don't drink enough fluid, if you don't cover your skin, and if you don't take frequent breaks, well, what can happen? Well, what can happen is that your body core temperature can rise to a certain level and you can develop heat exhaustion. What are those symptoms? Well, you feel excessively fatigued, you can start getting some muscle cramping, and in more extreme cases, you can actually develop significant confusion. Once you start developing those severe symptoms, more severe symptoms, first thing you must do is get out of the heat and hydrate. In most cases, heat exhaustion can be treated at home or be treated in a cool environment wherever you are. However, if you ignore those symptoms and you continue to expose yourself to those high temperatures, you can go to heat stroke, where you can actually get to a point where you lose consciousness. It increases your risk of going into seizures, which then further increases your internal body temperature and can lead to death. If you get to a point where you cannot get yourself hydrated properly, you cannot get out of the hot temperatures, you need to be transported to the emergency department, because it now has become a critical, potentially critical situation that's going to require aggressive intervention. IV fluids, cooling bags. Sometimes we put people in ice baths or put ice packs in their core areas of their body to bring their body temperature down. before they end up with some kind of a neurological problem. Pay close attention to yourself. Pay close attention to your environment. Make sure you practice proper precautions to prevent yourself from getting into trouble. But if you do, we're there for you. Go to your local emergency department, your nearest emergency department, immediately. I hope you like the content that we're putting out. I want you to hit the subscribe button so that as we continue to roll out new content, new topics, you'll get a notification, particularly if you hit the bell. Hit that bell notification and you'll be among the first to get notification when we put out some new content. Also, as many likes as we can get, it helps us a great deal with respect to our YouTube algorithm, helps us move up so that when people are searching for information on the topics that we discuss, we'll pop up and they'll be able to get up-to-date information. Once again, God bless you and stay safe.